Welcome back to the September 3rd regular council meeting, and we're reconvening at 7:27. We have no public hearing tonight. Jonathan, do we have any public comments that have been sent in?
Thank you, Worshiping Council. We have no registered public comments tonight.
Okay.
But I do know there's a couple people in the room that may wish to speak, or no?
Okay.
Does
Thank
not
you.
look like.
We have no delegations tonight. And that brings us to the consent agenda. Are there any items from the item 7 consent agenda? Are there any items from the consent agenda that councillors would like to see removed and dealt with individually? Councillor Wiley.
I'd like to remove 12.2, and I'm also ready with the motion.
Thank you.
I move that council adopt the recommendations of the following agenda reports by an omnibus motion. 8.1 regular council meeting minutes for July 23rd. 9.1 corporate quarterly report for the Q2. 9.2 council meeting schedule amendment. 9.3 the Christian Youngman Foundation Lead by Example powwow contributions. 9.4 Culture and Wellbeing Task Force funding recommendations. 9.5 the Real Property Transactions Policy number 6610. 9.6 Off-Site Levy Annual Report Fiscal Year 2024. 12.1 Sturgeon County Thank You Letter. 12.3 Notice of Intent to Annex Acknowledgement. 12.4 Royal Canadian Legion Branch 10 Letter. And if I may speak on the motion?
Yes, sure.
Just want to direct the public's attention to 9.5. Admin presented on this on July 23rd. It's available on YouTube. Again, it's the Real Property Transaction Policy. It's fantastic. It complies with existing bylaws and legislation. It's transparent, it's predictable, and it's forward planning in that it inventories and classifies all properties.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion on the consent agenda. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion is carried. So we move now to item 9, business. 9.7, Winter Road Pathway and Sidewalk Maintenance Policy number 3203. Donna, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Your Worshiping Council. So I'm back to talk about snow. So as you may recall during my last presentation, I'm going to do some repeat slides just to give you a reminder that this is our small but dedicated team. So Public Works has 1 supervisor, 1 lead hand, and 5 operators. Parks has 1 supervisor, 1 lead hand, and 3 operators. While snow is our primary focus in the winter, we have many other essential services we provide and maintain. I also presented a similar slide during the last presentation. We've had more opportunity to review the previous information and improve upon it. In particular, we have more accurate operational numbers with regards to days of response, and I'm confident with today's numbers. Having said that, our analysis has highlighted things that we will be tracking going forward and look forward to sharing improved statistics with you in the future. This is also a repeat slide. So we allocate $575,000 to snow each year, which is approximately 15% of the total roads budget. This includes wages, overtime, on-call, pickle mix, calcium, contracted services, and so far this snow season from November to April, we've spent $375,000. So during the last presentation, Council brought forward a few key accessibility concerns that they hear from residents with regards to crosswalk maintenance and accessibility to bus stops and mailboxes. So during our analysis, we have 170 crosswalks in total on all the priority routes. We have 55 mailboxes on the priority routes, and there's 22 bus stops on the priority routes, but the map we were provided actually has 26, which I'll cover in future slides. These maps show the crosswalks and mailbox locations. So the little red lines you see are all the crosswalks, and then the little dots are all mailbox locations. So we'll just go through a few of those, Strathmore Lakes and up in Lakewood area. Caught up there, sorry. So our conditions for analysis. Each crosswalk, mailbox, or bus stop would take approximately 10 minutes to clean. The average takes into account travel time and clearing. We estimate that this service level increase would add about 42 hours of labor to each snow event. And then we estimate the cost for that increased service level to be approximately between $280,000 to $560,000. And the tax implication for that would be approximately 1.65% to 3.30%. And then the bus route analysis. So these bus stops were provided only from one school division. We did not receive the bus stop map from the other school division in town, and we assumed that the number of routes and stops could increase once we receive that information. So just a reminder that we also have no control over these bus routes, and they are subject to change. And what you'll see on this map is we have 4 locations. Everything you see on there is already on an existing priority route. The ones in red are the routes that are not included, the bus routes not included, which is basically 4 stops that are not on the priority routes. So there's 22 bus stops on existing priority routes, 26 bus stops in total, and adding the additional bus routes would add approximately 3 kilometers of road to be cleared. So in the last presentation, we talked about the challenges of drainage in Strathaven. These proposed routes have major drainage corridors. While adding these would mitigate some issues, it would also introduce other issues. Strathaven has predominantly street parking, and windrows would be challenging to manage. Windrows will potentially narrow the driving lanes, making winter driving more difficult in these areas. Also could be challenges for parking. We see that on Center Street, which has a high volume of street parking as well. In addition, the windrows would also possibly prevent proper drainage, which may cause excessive ice, hazardous conditions, and if we don't manage it, it could potentially cause flooding in the street alleys and backyards. So the Park Lane Way analysis. So in my last presentation, I had brought up the fact that we actually already treat Park Lane Way as a priority 4. So that means that it's our first priority after we do our priority 3s. So we recognized that the site conditions warranted an above average priority for maintenance in this cul-de-sac. And keep in mind, other cul-de-sacs do not receive the same level of service. There is going to be future development in this area, so I would recommend at that time to reconsider adding Park Lane Way at that time.
Sorry, at what time? I didn't hear that.
Sorry,
At what time?
I think the next time that we come up because we come regularly with the snow analysis, that's when I would look at that again.
So can I just ask, sorry, is now a good time?
Yeah.
You said it's a priority 4. Is that officially in the policy? I didn't notice that.
It's not an official policy. So as I've mentioned in many snow reports that I've done, that we have our snow policy that we follow, and then we have our internal policies where we have our priority 4s and priority 5s. Okay. And that's where that falls, is when we start going into the residential, the back alleys, that sort of thing.
Okay,
so not official, but something we do. So additional routes. Park Lane Way would add 0.1 of a kilometer. The bus routes would add 2.95 kilometers, and Strathaven would add 1.47 kilometers. This would add a total of 4.52 kilometers to the priority routes. So the additional costs would range between $26,000 and $52,000 per season. This is just plowing. The tax implication would be approximately 0.15% to 0.3%. And keep in mind that if we do snow removal on this as well, if this was all added, this would result in about $8,000 additional per removal. So, as we discussed before in our previous report, that I know you've been asked about why we don't clear all the residential roads, and so here's some statistics on that. So the additional residential roads would add an additional 27.51 kilometers. The additional cost of clearing those would be approximately $156,000 to $312,000, with a tax implication of 0.92 to 1.83%.
Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. Do you guys like track like your per kilometer cost of clearing pathways?
Yes, but I didn't bring it for this presentation.
Okay, and that's all like kind of, I guess, separate.
This is not to include pathways. This is roadways only. Parks, they track theirs separately.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so snow removal cost per kilometer is $1,753 per kilometer. And if we did all the roadways, that is 77.71 kilometers of roadway. That range would be between $136,000 to $681,000, with a possible tax implication of 0.8% to 4%. And this is each removal of what that would add. So these are significant costs, obviously. So we further analyzed our feedback from the community. So we went through the citizen communication forms, and just to get a sense of what the concerns are that are brought forward. So in the 2024 to 2025 season so far, we've had one crosswalk complaint. We've had two crosswalk, that's in the citizen communication form. We've had 2 phone calls with regards to crosswalks. The majority of the snow clearing complaints are about residential sidewalks, so neighbor to neighbor complaints. And to a lesser extent, we have tracked complaints about windrows, and those are minimal as well. And keep in mind, when a CCF, a citizen communication form, comes into operations, we investigate every single citizen communication form, and we respond back to the resident after we've had time to review the concern, and if there's action necessary, we take the action.
Councillor Wiley.
Yeah, I can affirm that. I had one resident, in 4 years, I've had one resident reach out. I directed her how to fill out the CCF, the form. She got back to me. She was so thrilled. Your team came out and helped her right away, so.
Good. We like the citizen communication forms.
Donna or CAO Scoble, a question just concerning the amount of money that's left over. At one time, years ago, when I first got on council, we had talked about having a policy where if we had a low event snow season and there was money left over, it could be put into building a snow removal reserve. And in the past, it was just going into general reserves. So we have a $200,000 amount that didn't get spent because we had a pretty good winter, except for the wind and ice. But my question is did we finally get a concrete policy that does create a snow reserve for heavier winter snowfall removals? And
Yes, but I'll let Liana speak to it.
Okay. Thank you, Liana.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. We do have money that we do put away for the snow. I believe it is in the Financial Stabilization Reserve, but it is earmarked for the snow removal.
That's good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Liana.
So we also wanted to see how our service and costs compare to other municipalities, and we did find that our costs and services are also reasonable and comparable with the Municipal Benchmarking Network Canada, which measures performance and costs with participating municipalities. The current service levels are being met and often exceeded based on the current snow policy, and operations continues to meet other service levels while we are meeting the snow policy service levels. And just one example of that, I know that the handicap parking stalls are included in the are included in the policy, but we also clear all the approaches. The crosswalks get extra maintenance downtown. So, you know, we are, I think, going above that service level of making sure the accessibility is really good downtown. And I mean, you may hear differently, but I've actually gotten compliments on it from people in wheelchairs that have said we do a really good job down there. So again, we'll go back to that citizen communication form. If we have missed something, really do encourage people to use that so we can actually address the concerns if there is something that we have missed. So in conclusion, a review of the winter operations indicates that we're exceeding the parameters outlined in the snow policy, and the complaint trends show that we have few concerns about crosswalks, some concerns about windrows, and most concerns are related to the residential sidewalks. I think the proposed increase in service levels would be costly and require a significant tax increase. So at this time, I'm recommending that we maintain the current service levels and the existing policy and wait until the next scheduled review to see if we want to change it.
Thank you, Donna. Donna, do we get a lot of call-outs for our operations to remove snow from in front of people's properties if they're not doing it? Like, did we get a lot in the last season?
Not to operations, no. Those, like you're talking from municipal enforcement, like in front
Yeah,
of sidewalks
and
and
if we've
things?
had to send crews to clear
We
snow.
don't do that. They actually
Okay.
contract that out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Wiley.
So not only do I think your team's doing a great job removing snow, I think you're doing a really good job communicating to us about the meaning behind the service levels. I think this was a great cost-benefit analysis. I appreciated just how thorough everything was. I am interested in the Strathaven slide, if we could go back to that one.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, I don't have the exact page number in front of me. Because Strathaven's long been a concern of mine, and it's only an additional 1.47 kilometers to do those priority routes. But what I heard you say in this presentation is if we're just plowing those routes, that could actually end up making the drainage problem worse through the windrows that would be left behind.
That's correct.
Okay.
I know it's really difficult to see in this slide, and I probably should have had my professional people help with that. But you'll see some blue lines through there. So those are concrete swales. That's where the drainage needs to go in order to make it out to the ditch system. If we start putting windrows, like I'll just pick on the top northeast corner, a little bit down there. There's the road drains down into that alley or down into the ditch, but also that whole back alley system also drains through people's properties and then into the road and then into the ditch. So if we don't remove that windrow and we create a dam there, that actually has potential to back up into quite a few people's properties there. And we've seen it because the swale is in a shaded area, so we have to get out and we help the gentleman that the swale who has the swale. We help him because he is disabled and he can't clear the swale himself. So we go make sure that's open so that alley and that roadway can actually drain properly.
Okay, may I have 2 more questions? Yeah, and I'm really pleased to hear about the Park Lane Way. Like, I think like an unofficial priority 4 route is exactly what those residents were wanting. So I really appreciate hearing that. I am curious was there a slide on Hillview? I want to go back to that one.
The only part of Hillview I had was around the bus route
the bus
analysis.
routes.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So it's way up in the top corner. So I door knocked along the route, and we have had complaints from Hillcrest Boulevard. I door knocked along there. I've hit 1,000 houses this summer. No one mentioned snow removal except 3 residents along Hillcrest Boulevard. And so I'm interested in making a motion to add Hillcrest Boulevard. I don't need to do it for this winter, but I'm wondering, legislative, how would I best go about making a motion to bring back Hillcrest Boulevard in addition? Would I do that during the 2026 budget, or would I just add that to the next time? I'd like to add Hillcrest Boulevard eventually. What's my best way forward? I'm prepared to make a motion tonight too, if that's the best way forward.
So like we do with our budgeting procedure, you could make a postponed motion then that gets debated at the time of the budget.
Okay, so I'm prepared to read this budget, this motion. I'd like that council direct administration to bring the cost of expanding snow removal services to our 2026 budget deliberations for Hillcrest Boulevard. Yeah, absolutely, please.
Are you just talking the loop that we have up there or the entirety of
So when I
Hillcrest
looked at the
Boulevard?
map earlier, I can't tell exactly. When I looked at it earlier, I thought it looked like it aligned pretty closely just with the bus loop.
Yeah,
The bus route is what I wrote down. So should I add to my motion Hillcrest Boulevard bus route? It really was the only place, and the residents say what happens is because they're in the north corner on the west side of town, the wind comes in there and it just collects on that street. And so I get what they're saying, and it certainly has been brought to my attention before that there might be some problems there.
okay.
Does council want me to repeat the motion again?
No, and you have a
I just have
motion
a
on the floor.
question relevant to it.
We have a motion on the floor, so there can be
A
discussion
question?
now.
Yeah, it's just a question. Is this, so just so that I know exactly where it is this the one that goes in front of the doctor's office that's in that area?
Yeah, on the very south
Right,
end
so
of this
if
bus
that's
road
right, yeah.
is a doctor's home, and it goes all the way to the very north corner.
So
of
this is the
Strath-
one where
or
we
Hill-
previously discussed mitigation processes like putting sandboxes out there for residents to utilize. That was part of the discussion of this exact area. All right.
Councillor Langmaid?
Thank you, Worship. I just was looking to clarify and make sure I understand the motion. We are only looking for the red route along Hillcrest Boulevard. The future discussion would not include Hillcrest Manor Estates down to the south. And I know we've received complaints about that road previously as well. I just want to make sure I understand the motion.
Okay, so my motion did not include Hillcrest Manor Estates. I did door knock along there. I didn't hear anything about that. It was just that stretch along the bus route on Hillcrest Boulevard.
Thank you very much.
And again, we're just debating here whether or not we want to bring it back to the 2026 budget deliberations. We're not even talking about adding it for this year's snow removal policy. So,
Can you read it again?
yeah, I can repeat it. Mayor, is that all right? Yep. I move that council direct administration to bring the cost of expanding snow removal services to our 2026 budget deliberations for Hillcrest Boulevard along the bus route.
Councillor Peterson?
So because we discussed this at length at our previous meeting when Donna was in front of us, could we also add to the motion not just snow removal but mitigation? Because we did discuss mitigation other than snow removal on that route.
I'm fine if you want to make an amendment.
If you could add that in somehow, if I could make it an amendment, I would move that as an amendment to add mitigation.
So I think what
Snow
Councillor
removal
Peterson's
and/or
saying,
mitigation, yeah.
to bring the cost of expanding snow removal services or mitigation,
Yeah, thank you.
and you
Councillor
made
Wiley.
that amendment.
Thank you,
Okay.
Councillor Wiley.
If I can add something, I think we do need to be careful about the precedent this sets for. I understand that we're looking at bringing the cost estimate to us, but this street is a bus route. There are other streets that are bus routes. I'm gonna mention this. I live on a street that has a bus route, and it doesn't get bladed, and it connects to the bus loop that is at Westmount Drive. So, we have to be careful that I'm fine with it coming to us at budget, but at budget, if we're all back together, I think we really need to look at what happens when we bring something back because 3 people complained on a street. Maybe there were no complaints on my street, but I'm sure some of my neighbors would love to be bladed too, because they might say, well, the school bus goes right down our street and connects to Westmount Drive. So I think we should keep that in our minds as well. But I'm okay with having it come to us as coming to whatever council is here in the budget time. Councillor Wiley?
Yeah, I think that's worth mentioning. I'm certainly not bringing this forward because it's a bus route. I simply used the vocabulary bus route to best describe the section of Hillcrest Boulevard that I wanted to have brought back. The only precedent I think I'm setting is when I stand by, is if I hear something from 1, 2, and by the time I hear something from 3 residents, it's certainly something I'm going to bring back to council to have deliberated. So that's the precedent I hope I'm setting.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, that's right. So we have an amendment. Does anyone need to hear that amendment?
I don't think so, Your Worship, but if I could just speak to
To your
may I speak
amendment?
that? Just so I have heard for a long time, maybe even preceding my time on council, about that low area and the ice and problems that form in there. And so I am in support of looking at the mitigation that senior leadership brought back to us as one of the many possibilities that could happen in here. And so I would concur with Councillor Wiley that it's a long-standing issue, and I really appreciate the fact that our operations have known this and have not ignored it either.
Thank you. So does anyone need to have the amendment read back? Not seeing any confusion. I'll call the question on the amendment. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. And now, does anyone need the full motion read back with the amendment attached? Not seeing any confusion. Okay, do we need a motion? Did you make an emotion with that amendment too? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion is also carried. Are there any further questions for Donna? Councillor Montgomery.
I was asked a couple days ago how many acres of grass the town has to maintain, like mow.
Lots.
Is it?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, this person thought it might be 600 acres. Is that like?
I'm not even taking a guess at it at this point because I'll probably be wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
It's a lot. If you include ditches, the Eagle Lake pathway, et cetera, there is a lot.
Any other questions or comments? Any questions for Donna? Seeing none. Thank you, Donna, for your presentation. We move now to item 10, bylaws. We have no bylaws tonight. 11, councillor information and inquiries. 11.1, questions between councillors and council statements. Councillor Peterson, is this where you wanted to have your?
Yeah, it's on our website. I think it was between 8 and 5, Mark. Yeah, so.
I'm sorry, my mic wasn't on. Yeah, so just to pick up the particulate masks that the fire hall's offering?
Well, we'll keep updating daily, but it's, while the smoke is in town here, and it's an opportunity to visit the fire hall and interact with the firefighters. It's not just coming to the door. So we've kind of opened it up. Anybody that wants to stop in and have a chat is welcome to.
And there's no cost, correct?
No.
CA Scoville? And I just tribute to our firefighters again, and I know that Global News came out with a report in the last couple days about the new science around smoke that has traveled far and the dangers of that. So there might be many parents out there or people generally that are interested in that. So I thank you that. The other thing, relating somewhat to what we heard from Councillor Wiley tonight, and in terms of the Citizen Communication Forum, one of the things that I've heard citizens mention a lot is that they can't pin the locations on the Citizen Communication Forum. And so I said to one of them that came to my door, and one of my neighbors was trying to send that in, let me help you, I can do that. And indeed, I could not. And so I don't know if there's another option, because I think maybe on the older phones it's difficult to pin. And I might be wrong, it might just be inept, but it would maybe be nice to also have an option to just put an address in as well as a pin. I don't know if that's possible. I don't need an answer tonight. And then I have a question for Mr. Pretzloff, and I was wondering if you know offhand, or and it could be at any future time, how much money is left, if any, in the Culture and Wellbeing Task Force?
Through the chair, Councilor Peterson, with council's approval of the recommendations, there's $0 remaining.
So you spent it all?
Yes, $12,300 was remaining
Yeah.
before council approved the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pretzloff. I appreciate that. My last thing is that I received a call from the chair of the Handy Bus Society, from Mark Jabot, and he indicated to me that that the Handy Bus has received some grant money, and they are going to utilize that to purchase a new bus. And Chair Jabot articulated a really beautiful sentiment, because he emphasized that the community had absolutely contributed thousands and thousands of dollars over the years to sustain the work of the Handy Bus. And for that reason, the Handy Bus Association, while wanting to receive some compensation for the bus that they will sell, would also like to see that remain in the community. Simultaneously with hearing from Mr. Jabot, I also heard from the proprietor and owner of Kennedy Senior Services, who are providing a lot of service to seniors in terms of transportation and supported transportation. And of course, they are a for-profit organization, unlike the Handy Bus, and not eligible for grants. But the questions came about from the result of all of these, if there would be some opportunity for the FCSS, who already does threshold testing in certain components of that, to be able to work within this greater group to be able to access grants, subsidize seniors who are utilizing a for-profit service, but for perhaps FCSS to be able to contract the service, or possibly even have the Handy Bus subcontract the service. And if there wouldn't be a way to do that, so we can fill that gap for seniors who have fallen outside the parameters that the Handy Bus had to set in order to maintain the integrity of their book of business. So my hope is that our FCSS or our senior leadership could coordinate a meeting between these bodies to see if we could brainstorm ideas to see how we could better contribute to the well-being of the people in the community, because we have this unique opportunity in front of us. And if you need a motion, I'd be happy to do that.
CAO Scoble?
Yeah, no motion, Ricard. We'll take that away and coordinate that.
I'm very, very appreciative of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions between councillors or council statements? 11.2, board and committee reports. I don't see any in our agenda. 11.3, question and answer period. Councillor Wegener.
I just have a question for administration or legislative services. In the course of this upcoming campaign, in that I was looking at getting some more signs made, and I just need a little clarification. I've been reading the election sign bylaw, and I was looking at 3.6.3, where it says no person shall display the town logo in whole or in part on an election sign. Now, one of the things I was wondering, and I know we can't use the Strathmore logo or anything like that, but I really like the idea of being able to use that Strathmore votes emblem. And is that allowed? That is on the one that is on the webpage.
Jonathan?
Thank you, Worship Council. I might request that we take that back and just discuss too, just to kind of make sure that we're on the same page. But it is really important that the town maintains its impartial posture throughout this election. So right now, I think our preference would be that no town assets that were created are used on signage from candidates. But if you forgive me, I would like to take that back to our team just to kind of discuss a little bit more thoroughly.
Okay. All right, and all right, I appreciate that, and I'm holding off. And then just 3.8 C. no sign owner shall cause, permit, or allow an election sign or other poster to be placed on a highway, median road, sidewalk, mailbox, garbage, recycling receptacle, tree, street light, standard pole, traffic. What does it mean by road? Is what I'm looking for, what the definition
He
of?
wants to know if it means, can you put the sign next to the highway, or is it just saying that you can't put the sign on the highway?
Thank you, Your Worshiping Council. So how I'd answer that is it depends on who maintains it and who is responsible for that piece of land. So that question is a little bit more complicated because we do have service roads that go along our highway. And so the important piece of information there that would help us determine what our recommendation would be who actually owns that piece of land. Is it town property versus is it provincial jurisdiction? Provincial highways and including Highway 1 that goes through our town are under the authority of the province and not under the authority of the municipality, which is why we have that specified in our bylaw. So if you had specific areas that you had questions to, we can kind of look into that as a team and get back to you and provide advice. Yeah. But that would be my feedback right now is that it would ultimately depend on who owns that piece of land.
Okay, so that's highway, and then you've got medium, then road. So that is, like I say, it's just a single word road, and that was so it goes back to who owns that particular road, who cares for it. Okay.
Yeah, if I'm understanding your question correctly.
Okay, no, yeah. I was just trying to get a definition on what road meant and that.
So, Councillor Wiley?
May I? My understanding was when we passed this bylaw, I asked this question if it meant that the signs could be beside the roads, or is it just saying they're not to be on the road? And my understanding was it was fine if they were beside the road. So specifically, can signs go along Highway 1?
Highway 1 is managed by the province. However, like I said, we do have service roads that go along Highway 1 too. So it really did, if we had specific areas that you had questions to, we can take that back and look at it with our team, with administration, and provide feedback.
So if it's on provincially owned land, there should be no signs on it.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? 11.4. Oh, sorry, Councillor Langmaid.
Sorry, thank you very much. I was wondering if I could just make a request from Legislative Services that when we have some clarification on those things, would it be possible to send out an email to all declared candidates and maybe send that information out to any future candidates as well? Just because those are questions that I've had and that I know a few other candidates have had, and they're pretty common ones. And I was wondering if it might be helpful if it could just be sent to everyone so that we all have the same information. We're all playing by the same playbook.
Thank you, Your Worshiping Council. Absolutely. I believe just recently our returning officer did send some communications out on our election sign bylaw, and we will make sure that we present that information to all candidates, specifically regarding the logo for the Strathmore votes. I think that was our big takeaway here. If someone has areas along Highway 1 that they're really have questions about, feel free to send those locations to us and we can provide that clarity to the rest of the candidates as well. Mm-hmm. But like I said, without knowing the specific areas that we're referencing, it's kind of difficult to answer.
Right. And it's confusing for me because the feedback I received when I asked that question about Highway 1 was that I just wasn't allowed to put a sign on the highway itself, not next to the highway. So it seems that there's still a little still some confusion there, because I was told I wasn't allowed to make a sign on top of the highway, which was never my plan. But it still seems to be some confusion in the communication there.
Absolutely. We'll take this back and we'll provide further clarity to all the candidates.
Thank you.
Councillor Peterson.
And in spite of the fact that we can be fined, that candidates can be fined or potential candidates can be fined if their signs are wrong, you've always been extremely generous in giving warnings first. Yeah, and we greatly appreciate that. I learned today that if you're a candidate in the county, you can't have a sign within 250 meters of a intersection. In the county, yes. Yes, no, not a cow, no, in the county.
Cows
And so
move.
I'm thinking that there could be no signs anywhere if it's a quarter of a mile. That's interesting.
That brings us to 11.4. Jonathan, do we have any administrative inquiries? And then that brings us to now 11.5, notices of motion. 11.5.1, Councillor Peterson, boardwalk through the wetlands.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a notice of motion and some comments to follow. Do I need to read it into the record, Jonathan?
Thank you, Worship and Council. Yeah, if you provide notice, yeah, today.
Thank
please.
you. Whereas the town of Strathmore has made a commitment to preserving wetlands in our community, and whereas the construction of a sustainable pathway could provide access to recreational activities that promote environmental consciousness and wetland preservation while preserving the ecological integrity of the wetland, and whereas the wetland area now owned by the town of Strathmore, south of Grace Park, presents an opportunity for developing a pathway that would connect to the existing pathway system, and whereas the town of Strathmore is committed through our strategic plan to promote environmental engagement. Therefore, be it resolved that notice is hereby given that the following motion will be brought forward for consideration at the September 17th, 2025 regular council meeting. The council direct administration to investigate the following. 1, a feasibility study to assess the feasibility of constructing a sustainable pathway in the town of Strathmore-owned wetlands south of Grace Park, including an assessment of the scope of ecological assessment required and environmental regulatory compliance requirements to be met, and ensuring compliance with Parks and Pathways Bylaw number 14-07. And number 2, cost estimation. To provide a preliminary cost estimate for the preliminary assessments and any third-party studies required, construction, maintenance, and potential funding sources, partnerships for the pathway project. Community engagement. To outline a plan for engaging with the local community and stakeholders to gather input and feedback regarding the sustainable pathway. And 4, implementation timeline to develop a projected timeline for the investigative process from the initial study through to the potential construction phases, if approved, and that the findings and recommendations from this investigation be reported back to Council by January the 21st, 2026. If I might speak to this, Your Worship. So we do have this whole idea of sustainability within our broader plan, and this council, I'm very proud of this council and their articulated commitment to wetland preservation, and I'm sure that whoever sits behind this table in the next council will work diligently to create a wetland policy. In talking about this, I was able to have conversations with Tom Sadler and Rhonda Stockwell and other members of the Western District Historic Society, and they have said that they have money in their account, significant dollars in fact, that they would really like to contribute to this project. One of the things that Tom Sadler also mentioned, and that certainly proved out when I went to visit the Edmonton Walkway and the Frank Lake Bird Sanctuary, is that, and listening to our CAO, who's really knowledgeable about the ones that he's had experience with, is that there are 2 major drawbacks to these boardwalks when they've been created. One is that when they are constructed from wood, that in 25 years they're rotted, and the second thing, which is related to this, is that no maintenance plan and upkeep plan has been provided. So in talking to these people, they suggested that there are materials today that don't deteriorate in that same way, and that involving this notice of motion into our current Pathways project in the future would ensure necessary maintenance as well. The other thing, that conversation that I had was with Jeff Sage, who is a program specialist with Ducks Unlimited, and he talked very eloquently about how Ducks Unlimited is committed to, more than anything, education about wetlands going into the future, and that this is educating young people particularly will be of major interest to them. And while they made absolutely no commitment to funding, they talked about in-kind services. And so Ducks Unlimited has engineering reports They have architectural designs, and of course, they come with a huge body of knowledge, and they are very interested in being involved as a partner, as is indicated in the motion. Justin Gearhart is the current chair of our Western Irrigation District, and in conversation with him, he spoke about the same thing and about how Western Irrigation would be very interested in this as it abuts their canal system, and how they have things that they can bring to the table in-kind service, and how they would like to at least be party to the conversations. Communities in Bloom have also good ideas around things that could help to enhance. I was able to also talk to one of the Golden Hill School Division trustees. I have this idea that in the center of this eventual boardwalk, there could be a classroom that would be like a lookout, a gazebo-type closed-in classroom that I've seen on other boardwalks. And it could be used as a long-term educational facility for our local schools children, as well as for a lookout for people who are just simply wanting to educate and learn and enjoy our beautiful wetlands. And I talked about the idea of utilizing the huge capacity of school children to raise money through fundraisers, and for them to build the classrooms through doing wetland walkathons. And Rob Peary was the trustee I spoke to, and he had this great idea, because he said, you know, when you bring your plan to fruition, you know, you could just put the platform on, and over the next however many years it takes to earn the money to build that gazebo from the students invested in it would just be a wonderful project. So those are my thoughts around this, Your Worship. I'm looking forward to it coming forward. I've been really gratified by the support from multiple members of this community, and I know that our senior leadership team will find even more, and I'm also very grateful to the input of the senior leadership team and the knowledge that they brought to this. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Wiley.
Just, Councillor Peterson, I'm left in awe. Thank you. That's a really, this is great.
Thank you very much. We move now to item 12, correspondence, 12.2, playground zone on Park Lane Drive letter. And did someone want to speak to this? Councillor Wiley.
Sure, yeah. So we all received forwarded from Councillor Peterson a letter from someone living along Park Lane Drive. I also door knocked along Park Lane Drive. I heard several people talking about this. This has come up earlier in our term, the speed along Park Lane Drive. While I was standing there talking to a resident about speed, someone flew by at, I don't know, 60, 70 kilometers an hour. I said, oh, like that? And she said, no, that's nothing. People are hitting crazy speeds along here. So all I was just wondering is, if this is more of a question answer then, is what kinds of things can the future councils talk about in order to mitigate some of the traffic concerns along this route?
Thank you. CAO Scoble.
So there's monitoring and enforcement is one avenue, or there's engineering controls is the other avenue. In terms of monitoring and enforcement, we've been checking our records, and between, I believe, 2023 and 2025, between Park Road and Aspen Creek, we actually have 2,200 files, warnings, or tickets. We do regularly issue tickets in there, so it's not that there's not monitoring and enforcement. So perhaps we could do a speed study, which we've done. We do them all the time. We did one out in front of Town Hall here a couple of years ago, and the average speed was 47 kilometers. That said, the highest recorded speeds were 105 and 110 kilometers, if I believe correctly. So you can't use photo radar anymore. That's not permitted. That would probably be the most efficient way to keep the speeds down. You know, increasing monitoring and enforcement is an incremental cost, and it may not be the most efficient use of funds on a cost-benefit ratio, the benefit being mitigating a low-frequency, high-consequence event as an outcome of speeding. So you may want to do a speed study first off, and we do those all the time. It's no cost. We just set up the equipment with internal resources. But where I'm going with that is then you may want to look at engineering controls. So engineering controls are what I guess is known these days as traffic calming, and it involves different mitigation methods such as curb extensions. So there's a half a curb extension out here at Lakeside and 3rd Avenue. There's currently curb extensions being installed at Brentwood and Maplewood and Centennial and Maplewood. So in traffic design engineering theory and practice for probably 40 years, because I studied it when I went to school, by decreasing the lateral distance, it automatically psychologically forces drivers to slow down. And then coupled with that, sometimes you put a speed hump in, not a speed bump, a speed hump. So you can still travel over it at the speed limit.
Is that like the one on Center Street where there's the dip that you go through? Is that what a speed hump is?
Maybe, yeah, I'm not familiar with that
I
one.
think that was sort of a swale.
It might be more just,
A speed hump, yeah.
that might be
swale.
some subsoils that didn't quite get compacted the way they were supposed to. So, but maybe it serves a purpose. So, so you can look at those type of things. You know, Edmonton did it. St. Albert did it when I was there. I'm not sure about Calgary. I don't think they've done it, but a number of communities have done the traffic calming, whether it's curb extensions and or speed humps in combination with lowering residential speeds on roads. When I say roads, it doesn't include collectors and arterials, so it wouldn't include Park Lane out here, for example. But they have a number of communities in Alberta have lowered the speed limit on the residential roads from 50 to 40 too. So that's something you can consider as well.
Councillor Peterson.
The resident that wrote the letter also indicated that the town had done a real good job. Like she had absolutely no complaints about the work that had been done, and she understood all the work that had been undertaken over the years, because this has been an ongoing issue, and especially since we linked George Freeman Trail, that it has become a speedway. And she said, really, as Councillor Wiley mentioned, the majority of people are great, but that 10% that aren't are just creating such a dangerous precedent by a park zone, by a walkway where kids are coming home from school, and that it has become really dangerous. One of the questions I had was, now that there is another road that proceeds south off of Park Lane Drive, do you think that will have any impact on the speeds on the east-west avenue? And would it be reasonable, will we put crosswalks there on that next, adjacent to that south road now that's going there, north-south, or would we consider then putting a speed hump at that location under that mindfulness of control, engineered control that you talked about?
Yeah, I don't think it would do anything with the east-west traffic unless it was a three-way stop. But the warrant analysis is probably not there to make it a three-way stop. So you would probably look at, it's very similar to what we're doing up at Brentwood and Maplewood right now, and Centennial and Maplewood. We actually have another project for Center and Centennial, but it hasn't, it's come in below the available funding envelope. So, but we might bring that project back as well, and we could put a similar project in for Park Lane as well. But with respect to the Anthem development there, the next phase of Ranch, that's something we could work with the developer on to do similar to what we're doing up at Maplewood.
I know they just really appreciate anything that this senior leadership would bring back in terms of. Yeah.
I should have mentioned as well that the curb extensions, not only do they decrease the lateral distance, but what they do is they give greater visibility and a shorter crossing distance for pedestrians, right? So.
The other thing I was wondering about in terms of consideration would be, I remember Councillor Sobel several years ago. Lengthy discussions around the council table about reducing the speed limits around town. So we have 50-kilometer speed limits. We talked about reducing them to 40, and then reducing the speed limits in all school zones to make them the same as playground zones from dusk till dawn. But that's a conversation I know for another council and another day.
Yeah. The other thing we can do is we learn, well, I learned this up north, but we learned it from Calgary, they've been doing it for years, is you can install temporary curb extensions as well, right? So you just move them around, they're portable, they're like rubber. It's a bit of a pilot, then you can collect resident feedback while it's in the pilot phase, and so that's another option we could look at as well.
Councillor Wiley.
It sounds like you have a lot of ideas. Do you need a motion for this? I'm prepared with a motion if needed.
At this point, we can do a speed study at no cost. I'll talk to Ethan. We can probably do, Jamie, I don't know, do we have temporary curb extensions around? We could get them at nominal, like that wouldn't be a big expense if we didn't have them. I don't think there's a motion required at this time unless this council wanted to recommend accounts, like you just did with the last one, recommend that something be considered like a curb extension project in the 2026 budget. But
If you're adding it to your to-do list, I'm satisfied.
we can do
with
that. We can do the first steps at little to no cost within budget. So.
Thank you so much.
Councillor Montgomery.
So that speed test, or that would be like that armadillo or something like that?
Yeah, I'm not sure what equipment we're using, but it calculates your, it gives you the average, it gives you the 85th, you can get any speed you want, but we use the average, we use the 85th percentile, and then we have the AM and PM peaks as well in there. And
So it tracks time, right?
Yeah.
Could we maybe, do the speed test, but then even, if we do it over a week, you might see a pattern where there's somebody speeding at a certain time. Maybe we could position somebody there to catch that person,
maybe the one out here, the two highest speeds were recorded at like 11 o'clock in the morning on weekdays, which was not what we were expecting. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So that's it. We move now to adjournment. So at this time, I will adjourn the meeting at 8:25.